So let's move to the 2023 interior linebacker NFL draft preview. Our top five guys, and I'd like to give a shout out first before we get started to Toa Toa from Alabama, as I think his first name's Henry Toa Toa. He did not crack our top five list, but he is the runner-up there. If you go to top six, he's right there at number 6 for you, but we did not include him here. Just like in our last one, we gave a shout out on our receivers one. If you haven't already, check that out on YouTube or check that out on your podcast platforms. Do that. We did not include Jackson Smith-Njigba from Ohio State. He was the runner-up there. So just like that, Toa Toa is a runner-up here. Let's start out with number 5. We got Noah Sewell, a 6'2", 253-pound Oregon junior. Let's go through his pros and his cons. Pros for the linebacker, he's physical and he's strong. Not bad in pass protection against simple routes like a running back out of the backfield or a wide receiver running like a shallow crosser type of route. He's effective. He's an effective pass rusher when lining up on the side if a 5-man blitz occurs or something of that nature. And then his cons. He does have trouble tackling in the open field. He frequently gets successfully blocked by running backs, offensive linemen, and wide receivers on screen plays. And definitely keep that in mind because I think this is not a domino effect, but a repetition when it comes to these linebackers. A lot of them have trouble, whether it's with their feet or just in general getting blocked. These linebackers, basically these top 5 guys, most of them do frequently get blocked by running backs and by, offensive linemen and stuff like that. They have trouble getting to the backfield to either stop a running back on a run play because they get blocked by offensive linemen or getting to the quarterback if they're blitzing and they get blocked by a running back. So just keep that in mind. So also another con, he loses his possession often on play action or motion plays. And I just had one more note here is that he had a better season in his junior year, but a bit of a drop-off in his senior season, meaning that he had, their stats at least. I believe he had over 100 tackles in his junior year. This year was around like maybe 50-something. So it was, that stat specifically was a significant drop-off. Besides that, his play on the field was still superb. And if you recognize the name Noah Sewell, I also like to point this out too. He's got some pretty good family traits when it comes to the NFL. His brother, Penei Sewell, was just drafted a couple seasons ago or last year at this point.
2 seasons ago, yeah.
There you go. He now plays for the Detroit Lions and one of the best offensive linemen in the NFL. He's getting up there. So definitely a very good player. So, Alex, I leave it to you now. He's got the renovated grading system. Don't worry for the wide receivers. It stays the same, but he loves this formula that he's cooked up here. And no, it is not crystal meth for all of you Breaking Bad viewers that are listening or watching. But he does have a formula of his own. So let's hear it, Alex.
Yeah, so we had kind of an issue, last season and a little bit this season with the grading in terms of size. Certain people were undersized, or they were, really, really special athletes in terms of their measurables. So we added a category for size at the end, and it's based off of the RAS scores, relative athletic scores, that are out there, and that kind of shows the different percentiles for, arm length and height and weight, etc. So we use those numbers, put them in, as a digit, I guess here. For example, for Sewell, we have him as an 8.5, and that kind of gets added on to his score or contributes to his score. Obviously, it's weighted less than something like tackling or athleticism or pass coverage, but just something to throw out there with the grades. And before you do the grades, Josh, I would say for Sewell, it does seem like before this season, he really was almost the consensus number 1 or 2 linebacker in this class. And now you really don't see him on anyone's boards higher than 3. I think that's the highest I've seen him. So certainly a big drop off for Sewell during this season, but potentially a very good junior year tape could help him rise up the boards a little bit higher than where we have him.
Yeah, so I said not a significant drop off in his play because I what I want to say here is that I think it was just because everyone was living up to the expectation of like doing like superb, which is what he did his junior year. And when he was just okay to like that good level, that's not enough. We need more, right? It's kind of like a consistency of, I don't know, let's give like a NFL comparison, like TJ Watt, right? Didn't he just like break the sack record this year or something like that? right? Let's just say he has a season where he has a mediocre to above average amount of sacks in a season. Everyone's going to be like, TJ Watt, he dropped off. What's going on, right? No, it's just that he had a really, really good season, but maybe this one little statistic or, his play overall wasn't as good to his standard. So I think what really happened with Sewell, he set a standard his junior year, and that standard that he set by himself, he wasn't able to meet it in his senior season. So I think as the NFL draft works, as NFL scouts do their scouting, they're going to factor that in. But I don't want to discredit the guy. I still think he's a very good player. So I want to make sure that we keep that in our minds. Now, I didn't know how Alex does these grades by the grade point percentage of the total. Then I should say the grade point. That determines the round that we believe they're projected to get drafted in. I did it wrong, I guess, with the wide receivers, but I said the round first, even though that's determined by the number. So I'm going to do that last then. So as athleticism, we have here is a 7.5. His instincts a 5, pass coverage 7, tackling 5, and a size 8.5, which Alex said already, which totals to a 6.4 total score. And that is projected a third-round pick for Noah Sewell and the number 5 interior linebacker on our list.
Josh is getting into all the mad science here. Moving on now to number 4. We've got Jack Campbell, senior out of Iowa. He's 6'5", 246. And he's really your guy who I think he's not going to be a guy, for example, that the Giants would look at super closely. Obviously, if the value is there, you definitely look at him. But he's more of a guy who could fit right in as a first-year starter. He has the highest floor, I think, out of any of these guys. On day one in the NFL, he is going to be the best. He's definitely the most consistent. In terms of his play, he's got the highest floor, like I just said. He takes really good angles in pursuit against outside runs, and he has really good eye discipline. When runners are coming into his area, he can certainly read the quarterback's eyes. He doesn't get thrown off, and his instincts overall are very solid. In terms of his cons now, he does have a habit of taking on blocks kind of square and stopping his feet when he gets contact, and that usually occurs when he's trying to blitz up the middle. And also when it comes to blitzing, he doesn't really have any moves as a pass rusher. He's just more of a full speed run guy and just hope he can get through. And then his athleticism is really his big con. He's really got subpar change of direction. He's not really quick. And that could be obviously an issue in terms of blitzing, but also in terms of pass coverage, man coverage against running backs and faster tight ends. Or if he, ends up in zone against a possible, quick wide receiver. So that is something that's going to be needed to take into account with this guy. I think he's more of a guy who you're going to want in on more run-heavy downs for sure at the NFL level. His junior and senior seasons, he had over 100 tackles, 2 interceptions, a sack, and 1 forced fumble. So solid, consistent play in both of those seasons. Now moving to his grades. Athleticism, we have him as a 5, his main weakness. Instincts, a 7.5. Pass coverage, a 6. Tackling, 7. Size, 9. And that totals out to a 6.6, which correlates to a second-round talent. And that's where we have Jack Campbell from Iowa.
A couple of things. So first of all, going back to Jack Campbell, I just wanted to say that when it comes to his blitzing and he doesn't have many moves. I mean, a linebacker, especially at the college level, you're not really meant to have moves unless
you're not expected. Yeah,
you're not expected to have moves unless you're an edge rusher. That's something you're going to develop in the NFL. I'm sure. Also, there could be some teams that he gets drafted by. They run mainly zone coverage, so he might not even have to blitz ever. If you're in Wink Martindale's system, that's a little bit of a different story. We're going to want you to blitz. So I think, Alex, like you were mentioning, since he's not really good at blitzing, that's not really someone the Giants might look at. We're going to want a good linebacker that can blitz. Because since Wink Martindale's staying around, he didn't get his head coaching job that he wanted. So there's that. And then the other thing is with the wide receivers, I talked about how we should do like kind of a takeaway where if you don't remember anything else we said in 3 minutes, at least you take away this thing we said in 30 seconds. So I want to do that for these two guys real quick. We'll run it back. And Alex, you let me know if you agree with me. For Noah Sewell, I think it's our top pro, just like he's just a physical and strong guy. I think that's the takeaway that everyone should have, right?
Yeah. And then for Jack Campbell, I'd say high floor, not the most athletic. Best on day one is kind of what I'd his slogan should be, I think.
Yeah, definitely like the NFL ready player, I think is
Yeah.
what I would say for Jack Campbell already. Okay, so number 3 here, we have a little bit of an interesting, not interesting, but Deion Henley is there. When I want to say what's interesting is he's a 6th-year senior out of Washington State. Now, this occurs in college football sometimes when players are very interested in getting their way into the NFL. Sometimes they're able to either redshirt freshman year or something like that if they're not able to play, or just continue until they kind of find their way. And that's exactly what Henley did. He had 6'2", 232. He actually spent most of his years at Nevada, specifically from 2017 to 2021. Then he decided, for my final college season, I would like to go to Washington State, which is where he really shined. He has the potential to be an elite sideline-to-sideline backer. His open field tackling is very, very good. He only missed 5 out of his 97 tackle attempts this season, and his coverage skills is also a pro. Couple of cons is that he's slightly undersized at 6'2", and he cannot win off the edge, will be limited to an inside blitzer. So there's another thing there, similar to Campbell, has trouble blitzing off the side, just like he did. And that's what we have to say there. When it comes to his score, his athleticism is a 7, instincts 7, pass coverage 7, tackling 7. Do you catch a
theme?
A theme there? Yes, thank you. That's the word I was going for. And then a size is a 4, which I know is very low, but we had consistent 7s prior to that. And we did say being only 232 pounds for a linebacker, it's a little smaller than normal. So the overall score goes to a 6.7. I believe I've been seeing Henley mock to the Giants a little bit. So with that being said, this might be a guy that the team looks to look at, I should say, or looks to acquire in the draft. We'll have to wait and see. Projected 2nd round pick. I don't think I mentioned that. So I guess keep a look on Henley. Did he participate in the Senior Bowl?
Yes, he was one of the Senior Bowl standouts, yeah.
I was going to say, if I remember correctly, we definitely did talk about him in that episode video, whatever it was. So, yeah, I do definitely remember that name. So he's number 3 on our list.
Yeah, just touching on Henley real quick. Obviously, he's a little bit on the older side. He is 23 years old already. But I think overall, besides him being a little bit smaller than, probably being ideal for a linebacker, I think he has kind of the potential to be a guy who can really be a huge playmaker all over the field. And I think, you see the 7-7-7-7 for the grades everywhere. It's really because he's overall quite balanced as a player. And I think he could be a really, really solid pick for a team who's willing to gamble on the fact that he's a couple years older than the rest of the class. But we'll have to wait and see with that. Moving on to our number 2 player. He is Drew Sanders out of Arkansas, junior, 6'5", 232. He is a really, really strong off-the-ball linebacker. Could possibly, turn off some teams with that. He's not going to be your Mike linebacker, most likely. He can really blitz off the edge. He can blitz up the middle, and he's really, really flexible in the pass rushing game as well. His cons, he doesn't really have much experience in coverage and man coverage specifically. At Arkansas, they mainly played zone, and he was often asked to blitz on 3rd downs. And also another con is he very much struggles in the run game. He kind of gets pushed around and is unable to find much success there. Moving on to his grades, I guess here. Athleticism, he is a 6. Instincts, 7.5. Pass coverage, 6. Tackling, 7. Size, 8. And that averages out to a 6.8 out of 10, which correlates to a 2nd round grade. I think Sanders, I guess I'll do a quick takeaway for him here. I think he's a guy who's going to be more of a gadget situational linebacker rather than an every down Mike linebacker. And I think that's the main thing to remember.
Did we do one for Henley? I think we did.
I don't remember now. Don't worry about it. Well, for Henley, I'll just say it again here.
Yeah.
I think he's a guy who can be all over the place. He's going to be that guy who he's there, whether on the left side of the field, right side of the field, down the field, he's there.
Beautiful, beautiful. And then the only thing I have for Sanders, Alex, is that he is kind of just one of those players that you should note has that but he has that one superstar season. He did play in 2021, but he only had 24 tackles compared to 2022, where he had 100 plus tackles, 9.5 sacks, 3 forced fumble, an interception, and 5 pass deflections. So
Yeah.
it was a really boom year this year. And no, it wasn't in our cons, like only 1 year of production, because that's most of these college stars, but just definitely something to note as a viewer and as someone who's following the draft here, that our number 2 guy, Sanders, had one really big year. Okay, number 1 here, this consensus number 1 guy, it really seems like everywhere you look, that's his name. That's up there at the number 1 interior linebacker spot. It's Trenton Simpson, 6'3", 240 pounds, junior from Clemson. Quick. That's the takeaway I'm saying in the beginning. Maybe I'll mention in the end if I remember. He's able to keep up with wide receivers in pass coverage, which is a really big deal at the linebacker spot. He thrives getting past running backs or blockers on blitz packages, I should say. And this is good to note. It is a main part of Wink Martindale's defensive system. Not saying the Giants are drafting him or anything, but I did want to add that in there too. He's got huge upside. So that's his pros. On to his cons. He's over aggressive on run plays, which sometimes leads to linebackers getting juked out, or leads to him, the linebacker, getting juked out and missing tackles. He's also sort of small at the linebacker position. He could get manhandled in the NFL by a few players. There is a fix to that, luckily, though. It's by gaining weight. In the gym, I'm sure he's going to be hitting it all off season, getting ready for training camp, bulking up. And that's the thing that a lot of these college prospects will do. So make sure to keep, when we say undersized, it depends on what you're looking at. If you're looking at the height, there's not really much a person can do at that. They can't grow higher. They can't just be like, I want to gain 3 inches, right?
I mean, some of these guys do grow, by the way. They do they do gain an inch or two. And obviously all these measurables, right? The size, that Josh is going to talk about now and in the rankings or whatever, those are going to adjust, right? But this is pre-combine. We're going to get all the measurements again at the combine. So that'll be helpful as well. Maybe one guy's actually 6'4" and 245 instead of 6'3" and 240, for example.
Yeah, I mean, all these numbers are jumbled depending on what site you look at. So, I'm looking at ESPN. That's how I'm getting these. If you look at something like PFF or CBS Sports, it's a complete different marker, and it's not something super off, but maybe it's like an inch off and 6 pounds lighter or whatever. So just keep that in mind. But what I meant to say was undersized. If their height is undersized, then kind of is what it is there. But if it's their weight, that's something that really all college players work with in the offseason into the NFL after they get drafted, is getting bigger. And that's something NFL players do throughout their entire career. So don't take it as a huge comment where like, this guy's undersized, they're not big enough. They can gain weight. That's like an easy thing for football players to do. That's what they've done all their lives up to this point. Go ahead, Alex.
What I would say is it's for certain players, right? For example, Devontae Smith a few years ago, right? He was like 30, 40 pounds underweight. It felt like, undersized. I don't want to say underweight, undersized for the NFL. So that's a concern. But for a guy like Simpson, right? He's 240. You'd probably want to see him get in the 250 range. I think that's a little bit different. That's something that's more manageable.
Okay, so let's go to his grade now. Athleticism 8, instincts a 6.5, pass coverage a 7.5, tackling a 7, and size a 7. Overall goes to a 7.2 for our number 1 interior linebacker, and a late first round pick is what we have projected there. The final takeaway, so I mentioned it one more time, quick. Because he's quick, he's able to tackle quickly as long as he's not over aggressive, and especially keep up with wide receivers and tight ends in pass coverage, which is something you really want your linebacker to be able to do. And that is why, part of the reason why he is our number 1 linebacker.